My guest today is filmmaker Meron Alon, and her newest short film, Too Good, brings both humor and philosophical weight. Now, the film invites viewers to question their own assumptions about choices, consequences, and worthiness. And the film's powerful cast elevates its sharp, playful script, with six-time Emmy-winning actor Gene Smart reign supreme as a jaded, no-nonsense god, bringing both bite and surprising warmth to her portrayal of the Almighty. Now, opposite of her, comedian and actor Lil Rel Howery grounds the film with his signature wit and emotional honesty. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Meron Alon and her brand new short film, Too Good, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. I found your short film very funny. So, where did you get the idea for Too Good?
Yeah, generally my work, I kind of like to explore feelings that are like a little under the surface. And I realize that something that I ask myself a lot is, am I a good person? Um, and I think that's something a lot of people, maybe ask themselves. And it's not an easy answer, and not an easy answer because what is good enough. So I kind of started asking myself, what does it mean to be good enough, and started coming up with all these examples of like little things that we all do that are maybe not so good. And I had a lot of fun with putting that in a film. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that to be kind of funny because even when I was watching the film, you really bring the audience to start answering those questions themselves. And we've all had the thoughts of what questions we would be asked at the gates of heaven, but the questions you pose in the film are far from what many people would ever think about. So how did you come up with a series of
How did I
questions?
come up? Yeah, so for people that haven't watched the film, haven't seen the film yet, so this guy dies. We're at the gates of heaven, and God is waiting for him there, and God is Jean Smart, and she asks him a series of questions to decide if he's good enough to get in. And as you said, the questions are a little bit non-traditional. Like, for example, do you ever press the close button in the elevator when you're inside and you kind of hear someone trying to come in, but you already want to zip up, and then it kind of escalates from there. Um, they have to say they actually came really quick. Like once I had that concept of things that most of us do, that are kind of like not great, but everyone kind of does it. Then I just started getting a lot of ideas, and they're still coming.
You know what I one of the underlying themes that I noticed in this film with the series of questions is that you know God is an all-seeing God. So even when we think of the little things that don't matter, little things that we do, some of the questions that you posed in this film, we don't think too much about. We don't think there's any consequences to it. And I guess in some cases there probably not, but to have them brought up and then to have you point blank answer them, I found to be very humorous.
Yeah, thank you. As you said, like I do see the film as a bit of an interactive experience, and you can see, sitting. We just premiered at Holly Shorts Film Festival in LA. I'm in front of maybe 200 people, and you can see people like squirming in their seats, and you can see the things people laugh at, and it's obvious that they've done it. So that's very fun, entertaining to me to experience people experiencing that film that way.
And what was so funny is that the questions that you pose are not about the elements in the Ten Commandments. But again, in some of the small everyday things that we do, but again, we don't think about the consequences. And so I kept thinking when I was watching the film a few times, I'm like, how deep did you have to dive to come up with some of these, I guess, trivial missteps in our life?
I don't know. I think so just for again, people that haven't seen the film, some of the other questions are, have you ever peed in a pool? Have you ever fantasized about someone dying? Have you ever left the supermarket by the cart, after you're done with your groceries, which is a thing a lot of people do. So it was just kind of, you know, yeah, pulling from, yeah.
Well, what was funny was
Everyday
is
life.
you started off with a such a trivial question about dropping the ice cube. Do we pick it up and put it in the sink, or do we just kick it under the refrigerator? And and then you slowly start elevating the questions as they move along. And yeah, I can see why the audience would start squirming in their seat because I think we're probably all guilty of every single one of those questions.
That's where I'm going with this. And Jean Smart, who we were just ecstatic, wanted to be in this short. She said that first one was the one that got her. She said when she read that one, she was like, "Okay, I got to do this." So
She liked the ice cube question.
she liked the Ice Cube one. She also said she really liked the farted in economy class. I think those were two of her favorite.
I think the one that's probably besides the peeing in the pool, and of course, she elevates the question even more and says jacuzzi because that is very
All.
it's very contained and very close if other people are in there with you. So I thought, wow, that that's worse than the pool. But
That's worse.
I
Oh.
thought the elevator question, I think that's the one that probably brings more shame to
Mm.
people because it's kind of like I know what happens when we get into an elevator, especially if we're the only ones. We are pushing that button multiple times to get those doors to close.
And
But
even if
then,
you're like, hear someone come in and then you're like kind of squished to the side because you don't want them to see you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, or at that last second, you have that feeling of guilt, and then you put your hand out to keep the door open to look like you've saved their day.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think a lot of kind of the commonalities about all these ones is that you're being a little selfish. You're prioritizing yourself and, not being selfish, being considerate of other people, I think is a value that we all aspire to. And I do think it is a part of being a good person, but no one's perfect. And it's hard to be perfect and considerate of everyone else all the time. And I think that's kind of like generally the high level point I'm trying to make is, we're living in a world where people, especially with social media, people like to point fingers at other people of all the ways they're being, you know, not the best, but in reality, like no one's really perfect, and we're all work in progress. And I think a good place to start is just to kind of like acknowledge, the places where you're not being perfect, and then hopefully, improving and trying to be a better person every day that you
Well,
can.
yeah, and you bring up three areas. You bring up choices, consequences, and worthiness. And of course, worthiness is the heavy one of the three, something that millions of people deal with, either thinking that, am I worthy enough or I'm not worthy enough for whatever is before them. And it's basically self-judgment. And but you place the character right in front of God. And even though we think of God being, of course, God is the judge overall, but to stand in front, all of a sudden you've put the self judgment immediately upon us, which that's where I guess the uneasy feelings start to come in with all of the questions.
Yeah, yeah, I like, as I said, squirm, like I'm going for, laugh and squirm at the same time. Yeah. That's
But
what.
with the character Michael, it was so funny because if people watch this film close enough, you start seeing him. He's thinking about every question. He's trying to figure out as was that really important? And but we also notice him in some cases starting to justify his own actions, um, which I thought was really funny as the questions moved along because a lot of us unknowingly try to justify our own actions, even if it's things that maybe, I guess in a way we sit there and we go, well, I didn't hurt anybody.
It's like a tiny thing. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I think we all. Yeah, you're right. You're spot on. I think we all justify it. And Lil Rel Howery, he just did a terrific job. I think one of the reasons I wanted to cast him is because he just has this like aura as an actor in the roles that he did of this great guy, and kind of the whole setup of you when you first meet him. He's really smiley. He's wearing this like button up white shirt. The set is very colorful, so you feel like very comfortable and, welcomed, and like, oh, this guy is gonna go to heaven for sure. And even, God is like looking in her big book of life, and she's reading about his life, and she's like oohing and wowing, and you're like, oh, this guy is gonna go to heaven for sure. And then she starts picking on all the finding all the little bad things that he did, and you kind of start experiencing with him the feeling of like, maybe I'm not gonna make it. Yeah, obviously we don't know what happens, after we die, and are we gonna face, this type of experience or not? But just like I had a lot of fun just trying to imagine how that would feel.
You know, it was funny the moment it was his turn, and the look on his face when he goes, "Ping pong accident? Really?" And I'm like, "Wow. Have we ever thought how we want to leave? I mean, do we want to leave in a glorious way, or do we just want to leave in a nice easy way? But a ping pong accident? I
I
mean,
choose easy. I choose easy way. But I was trying to figure out how to have him die, and I was looking for crazy ways people die, and then also you can hear him. If you remember how it starts, is you can hear him die, but you don't see it. That's because it's a small short film budget production we shot for one day. So I was trying to think about how can I kill him just like with only hearing, with something you only hear, and everything turned into he died by a ping pong
no, I
accident.
thought
And
it, I thought it, yeah, I thought you started the film perfectly because it's not
it
like
has
we had to
actually
see it.
happened. A person actually had died in a ping pong accident. It did happen at least one time in the history of the world. So
Well, we shouldn't be laughing about the one that actually
I
died,
know,
but it
I know.
was, it was, it was funny to watch him think about when he's standing in front of God going, a ping pong accident, really? Because it's almost like I'm gonna be here in eternity, and all the people that I meet in heaven, they're gonna go, so how did you get here? And then he's gonna be stuck with that answer.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but I like that. We're working on, hopefully expanding the short film into a full feature where we kind of get to see what happens, after he actually goes and like a little stunt in hell, and then tries to make his way out of hell. So I haven't thought about that idea, having those conversations about how people died, but I like it.
Well, you also bring in, I'm gonna call them the silent characters, and it's all of the people standing in line behind him. Now, I thought the nun was a perfect person to put in line because what's funny is about her, the look on her face, she's already judging.
Yeah,
But why did
about
you
every
put
little thing.
why did you bring the child in?
Yeah, I mean the child. So by the way, the nun, the actress just did a terrific job. Her name in the script is Bitchy Nun, and I think she just captures it perfectly. Like her judging look about like every little thing is just perfect. The child was one I kind of wanted to get a little bit. The people that are waiting in line are, they're mostly like elderly people with white hair, obviously, but then you also have people that have died in unnatural causes. So I thought it's just a little sad to see like this adorable, cute kid that's waiting in heaven, but that unfortunately happens. And then that was also, we have, if you remember the follow-up to the joke of have you peed in a pool, and he kind of uses the kid as an excuse, like, obviously Peter's a fool as a kid, and then the follow-up question is as an adult, if you remember. So it just helped me a little bit with that joke
Yeah.
there, and that kid was just so sweet and adorable.
Yeah, he was looking for some moral support with the question until she turned around and goes, as an adult. And then it completely changes the whole perspective of the question.
Yeah, yeah. Is the most adorable little kid also.
So, how did you come to actually cast Gene Smart as well as Lil Rel Howery?
Yeah, I when I started, I thought it would be almost impossible to get someone at that caliber. But my producer, we had an amazing producer, Arjun Yadav, and we had a dream that maybe we could. And Jean was at the top of my list. She just has the best judging face, and just like such a good combination of like that kind of judging, as you see her in acts and hacks, and then also this like warmth. So I thought she would just be amazing. We were able to get these incredible casting directors, Barbie Block and Robin Lippen, to join us. Again, it was a low budget production, so really not a lot of money. They just really loved the script. And then they did their Hollywood magic and got Jean's manager to read the script. She really loved it and got Jean to read it. It was really, a dream. I think it really helped that, the role is God. So, it could be exciting for someone to play that. And, we shot in LA. It was just for one day. And we planned our schedule around Jean. We said, like, if you could do it, we'll, let us know when you can and we'll shoot it then. And, kind of all these pieces together fell to making it happen. And then once we had Jean, which of course we were ecstatic, um, you know, anyone would want to work with Jean. And Lil Rel, I think, just did such an incredible job. He's so funny. He was just such a good improviser. I want to say most of the script, is what I've wrote, but some of his, I want to say like maybe two or three of his improvised comments kind of made it into the script. Like every take, he just came up with something, and it was really, really fun to see him work.
Well, what was it like directing both of them?
Yeah, I have to say maybe I was came into it a little intimidated because they're both just such incredible talented actors. Jean was just such a queen. She's the opposite of a diva. She was just so nice to me, to everyone, to the extras, everyone on set. I think she was very collaborative, really, wanted to talk to me about my take on, this God, and kind of shared a little bit about how she saw it, and was very open to any directing notes. It was really like a dream to work with her. In terms of the look, I wanted to have this God be a little like bureaucratic, right? Because she's like standing there all day, and she's like processing people all day. So she had a little suit, and she has the God name tag, and she's also a little fed up, all day she's like seeing all the you know stuff that humans do, and she's like a little fed up with us. So she's also a little bored, but she's like kind of trying to have a little fun. Yeah, so that was kind of the high level directing notes. And then Jean really wanted to do a long white wig, because she's never really had that type of look, maybe. So once she came up with that idea, we absolutely loved it. And it took a long time. It was a big effort to find a long white wig that's of high quality and fitting of God, but we made it happen.
She pulls the role off so perfectly because when when Michael is standing in front of her, I think even the audience can't read her. And I think that's what made her role so much funnier because we couldn't tell if she was being serious or if she was joking. And I think that just made the whole film.
She's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think she's just perfect as God. Like, I mentioned we're hoping to turn this into a full feature. Like, I would watch 3 hours of Jean Smart as God.
Yeah, we haven't had a good uh comedy film about God since George Burns. And well, and I think well maybe Bruce Almighty.
Bruce Almighty, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It's been a very, very long time, and I think we need a new one. But tell me about the set creation because you said you shot the whole film in one day. So how did you get the set created?
Yeah, we shot on a soundstage in LA. I think in terms of what physically we had, practically we had on set, it was just God's podium, and we had this really beautiful wooden door, like vintage wooden door from India. That's we just kind of rented for the day. So that was the gates of heaven, and then everything around was we added in VFX. So, as I said, I wanted it to feel like very colorful and very warm and welcoming. You're about to get into heaven and kind of beautiful, warm details. The colors, I'm an artist, also a visual artist. So just colors are really important to me and kind of pulling everything together. Yeah, and then we had a VFX artist that work on kind of the design of the background later on. Yeah, it was, because again, it's like a small production and like VFX is, gets more expensive the more you move the camera, the more people you have. So we were a little bit limited in how much we can like move and move around and everything. But I think it's mostly a dialogue anyway, so it worked well.
Yeah, because you only had I'm trying to think and count. You only had what, two actual camera angles? Maybe three?
Yeah, something like that. Not a lot. Yeah.
And it works. I mean, with short films, you don't have to. So I think with some short films, you don't have to overthink it, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is also a little bit, you can kind of see it maybe a little bit as a skit, but yeah, really, really happy with how it came out.
So I know that the film was seen at Holly Shorts. What were some of the questions that you received from the audience after they saw it?
Questions from the audience.
They're probably wondering how in the world you got Gene Smart.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's a lot of, uh, up and coming filmmakers at these festivals, and I think it's hard as a short film to stand out, and it definitely helps to have a star at this level working on the film. So that was a big question. Yeah, I mean, I think just the inspiration, similar to what you asked, like where did the idea come from? Um, yeah, that was kind of the main questions.
So how many short films have you done?
This is my second. This is my second. I started my creative career later in life. I started in business actually. I actually went to business school and had this traditional, like, let's call it like business school career. I worked as a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group, and I worked at Uber as like a executive working on like strategy and operations. And I, realized at some point that I just wasn't happy. Like everything in my body was just telling me I'm not living the life that I'm supposed to live, and there's something else. And I always, like, in the back of my head, kind of wanted to work in entertainment, but it felt really so risky and so scary. And, you know, I kind of, I want to say maybe hit like this emotional rock bottom that forced me to ask myself, like, what do I really want to do and what's going to make me happy? And then there was an obvious answer that what I want to do is, work in entertainment and create. And, at the same time, I started, started having this idea for a TV show that was inspired by something that happened to me. And I was just like, okay. And it just would not let me go. It just kept, popping in my head. And I was like, okay, I'll take the sign from the universe that this is, what I need to do. So I just, I've never written any scripts before. It was my first script ever to write, but I just started, you know, of learning from reading other scripts and obviously like kind of watching stuff and reading books and just started writing. And that first one is obviously very bad, but you just get better and you start sharing it with people and you get better. And the first act, TV turned into another feature script and another feature script. And even on that first project, ultimately was able to get a producer to work with me on that. We couldn't unfortunately get it all the way produced, but that was a vote of confidence that there's something there. So just like kept writing and getting better and kind of getting in better and better feedback. And at some point I was like, okay, it's hard because you keep churning material and you can't get it all the way through. So I just decided it's time to start, producing something, and that turned into my first short, which is called Anxious. It's very different than this one. It's about a guy that's really worried about climate change, which is what I was feeling at the time when I was when I created it, but isn't actually doing anything about it. He's just worried, which I feel was kind of how I was at the time. So, that was the first one, and I learned so much from it. I just kind of did everything, like worked on the casting, worked really with an experienced producer that really mentored me through the process, but worked on the casting and the location, and it was my script, and worked with the actors. So really on the editing, so kind of did everything. And that after I was done with that, I was like, okay, now I feel, ready to do something bigger and maybe bigger budget and kind of a little bit bigger scale. And now that I've done this, I feel like I'm ready for, my first feature. So now I'm trying to find what that script is.
You know, Meron, I find people like you inspiring
Thank you so much.
because, and ladies and gentlemen, I know that many of you who watch all of my interviews, many of you are up and coming filmmakers. You want to get into filmmaking. Some of you are seasoned. But what I've noticed this year in the areas of short films, there are more bigger, well-known actors appearing in short films. The thing that you did was the same thing the others did. When they wrote their script, they knew exactly who they had in mind for their lead role without having the connections to get to that person. But through perseverance and in some cases either luck or a miracle, they end up with the person that they truly wanted for that lead role. I also look at it as going to the Quentin Tarantino way of film school, which means he didn't go to film school, which means you don't have to go to film school to become a filmmaker. You just need to be creative. You need to be, I guess, a little risky, and just step. And well, I'm just going to say it with this film: stepping out in faith and going for it, because you never know. And so I find people like you inspiring.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of insecurity. It kind of came with a lot of insecurities because, I starting so late and like, what are people going to think? And, I already have all the student debt and I'm too old and like, it's never going to be good. Like a lot of insecurities that I had to work through and just be like, this is, what my intuition is telling me to do. This is, what I'm passionate about. And, you have to like take a leap of faith and believe in yourself. And it doesn't, happen overnight. There's so much work that, came before. And some days like, I've spent, 6 months writing a script and then, three people read it and that's it. Like unlike a book, at least like maybe you write a book and you publish it and people may or may not read it with a script, like no one's gonna read it. But it taught me to just to get better. And sometimes there's like a little scene from that film that ends up in something else that I do. So it's just constant a process. I'm also a visual artist, and I'm self-taught, and I've made so much bad bad work. But that's just a part of the process too. And like sometimes you spend so much, on this one thing, and then it ends up not great or ugly, but like it taught me a lot of stuff. So I used to have in my studio like a little note that said, just make a little bit of progress every day.
Yeah, I love the power of the short film. I love the way filmmakers create their film. And what I mean by that is there are those that end up with a top actor for their role. There are other filmmakers where the whole cast has never acted in their entire life. And then you end up with some of those films where the actors have never been in front of a camera, and then they end up getting Oscar shortlisted or even nominated. And in some cases, it's the filmmaker's very first film. So this is an industry that I still believe where dreams can come true, regardless the hardships, the risk, the hair pulling moments, wondering if you're going to get it made, the delays, the lack of funding. But in the end, there is still magic and miracles in filmmaking. And if somebody's got the desire, just go out there and do it.
Yeah, and it's getting, hopefully, it's getting hopefully a little more possible and affordable for everyone to create something. Like when we played in Holy Shorts on opening nights, one of the other shorts was shot on an iPhone. So and it looked like the same as everything else. So obviously you still need to set up the lighting and everything, but like that can cost a good amount of cost if you don't have to hire rent an Alexa for the day. So yeah, and I've seen there's some film festivals where there's shorts that are under 1 minute. So you can, and some people make incredible things. You have to be so creative to be able to tell a story in under 1 minute. But then you can make something way cheaper, and and maybe capture people's attention and find an audience. So there's so many ways to be creative now.
Yeah, I think the ones that are less than one, and I've seen 1 minute shorts, and it's amazing what you can pull off in 1 minute. And to hear the filmmaker goes, yeah, it took us all day to do that. and but the ones under 1 minute, I think they're considered micro shorts. But it goes back now to you know now there's that whole vertical platform that's being created. And the vertical platform, some of them have estimated that platform to be worth 14 billion now, but most of the vertical content is coming out of China. But it also goes back to a few years ago when Vine was the biggest video platform for people to create, and technically those would have been considered micro shorts. So now you mentioned earlier that Too Good is a proof of concept for the possibility of a feature film. You've already started writing that?
Yeah, so I have a script where working together with my producer, trying to get it to be just right. It's a long process, and of course, would be a dream to get the same cast to want to join us to turn it into something bigger. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think if you had the same cast, it's just perfect for a very broad audience. And we need another film in this realm because we haven't seen this. And my gosh, how long has it been since Bruce Almighty? Or what was the sequel? Evan? I know that it was with Steve Carell.
Right? Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So yeah, so I want to see Too Good as a feature film, and for all of those that have seen the film so far, or those that are going to be seeing Too Good in the future, what would you like the audience to take away from seeing it?
Yeah, I think as I said, no one's perfect. We're all work in progress, and just starting with kind of recognizing your flaws is a good place to start, and try to be better, a little better every day.
Well, I love that. I completely agree. And ladies and gentlemen, Meron Alon's Too Good, a darkly comedic yet heart-filled short film, follows a recently deceased man, Michael, played by Lil Rel Howery, who finds himself at the gates of heaven. Now, instead of the solemn judgment he expects, he's confronted by an unconventional God, played by six-time Emmy-winning actress Jean Smart, who puts his life, flaws, and choices under an unexpected and humorous lens. What begins as a celestial interview quickly becomes a provocative exploration of human imperfection, redemption, and what it truly means to be good enough. Well, Too Good is hilarious and gives a chance to laugh at ourselves about some of the trivial things that we have done in our life. And everything, every little decision is a choice and doesn't mean we're actually flawed. It could be that we're just lazy. Now, like kicking the ice cube under the refrigerator instead of picking it up, or not returning the shopping cart to its rightful place in the parking lot. But Too Good proves that humor is the medium that will make us think, laugh at ourselves, and who knows, make us better people, or in the film's case, maybe save us from eternal damnation. And well, Miran, I want to thank you so much for sharing this very funny, delightful film with me today.
Thank you. This was really fun. Really appreciate your time.
You're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to an upcoming film festival and Too Good is going to be playing, make sure you're sitting in the theater because you're going to love every single minute of it. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on your way to work on Spotify and more. Well, as I always say, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.